interesting. I say interesting, so I am irrelevant.
Oh, no.
So I am irrelevant.
I don't know that that's the word that's
I am
best
irrelevant.
fits in that situation.
No. I am irrelevant.
Oh my gosh, our church is live now.
That reminds me, that's cool.
Yeah.
You think you're hot, but it's not exactly.
Yes.
Think you are.
She wants to check Facebook. And we walk into the room.
Don't get emotional. You know it's the truth. I'm too cool for you.
So we used to take the legs off of our mini trampoline and use them as microphones to perform that song. Why wasn't I around for this? Because it was before you existed in my world. Oh, I'm not sure.
It was before you existed. It was before.
Well, it was BC before time.
You know, I have a mini trampoline if you want to borrow the legs.
No, we would take turns being the mean girl. And we knew the choreography pretty good.
Do we still have the video of us jumping in the trampoline? This was my choreography.
I don't think so, but I have the funny pictures.
I'm pretty about yourself.
Folks think about it.
Well, their church is 2 hours away. Yeah, so I live here, they live up there.
I was thinking you were.
So it's got like I work up there, yeah.
It's got a monitor and everything that will tell you.
I like coming home on the weekends because there's nothing really up there for me because it's like really small.
Oh yeah.
And I'm having friends up there.
Oh my gosh.
Play-Doh or Play-Doh or
Yeah.
So when I go up there, there's like nothing for me to do. I'm just like, I'm not a big hiker. I could try, but I'd be done in a while. I'd be like, oh. Nice. 30 seconds. Over there? Come on. That's weird.
I'm just gonna start
Where'd you
playing
guys
James.
go?
That's why I'm gonna play cheese. I don't need it for the first one. Look, it's the first one.
Oh, I can't do that. I wore this shirt for Mudfest.
I know there's a big around Play-Doh, so I don't know. There's not really a lot. There's not really a lot of these, right?
Keep alive!
And washes over me. You have made me new, now life begins with you. It's your endless love pouring down on us. You have made me new, now life begins with you. wanna pray? I'm doing the whole darn thing.
I'll pray.
Okay.
I'll pray. God, you're so amazing, and I don't know, that song just kind of takes on a whole new meaning for me. Just going out and seeing the beauty that you have in your creation, and God, we just never want to take that for granted. I thank you for just the wonderful weather we've got outside, for the just beauty of all of what you've created, from just beauty in your nature to the humanity itself, God. We just want to praise you and lift you up for that. And we pray that today that you will just be lifted up and glorified, that we will just find ways to just listen to your word today. We'll find opportunities to just dive deeper into what you have for us. And that, God, when we leave here today, we won't be the same as we came from. So, God, we love you. We thank you. We pray these things in your name. Amen.
Thank you. Yeah, pretty cool. Oh gosh. Good job, you made it up. Thanks, I found this chair incredibly hard to sit in. It's more just the fact that getting into it requires a lot of core strength and balance that I don't have. Come hither. Please. Do we have announcements so I can sit here awkwardly?
There are no you. We're gonna be
A terrible way to die. A terrible way to die. A terrible way, a terrible way, a terrible way to die. Announcements, announcements, announcements.
We're buying time for you.
Thanks. I'm ready. I'm awkward.
Men's
so
group,
I want to
men's group
transition.
Wednesday night at 7 o'clock at my house.
There has to be announcements now.
There's no official youth stuff this summer, like no official like weekly stuff. I'm gonna try to post some things up on online, just like devotional kind of things every once in a while. And then I'm still trying to plan stuff for the summer for the youth, but like no one's gotten back to me yet. So I plan on inviting the youth to the church stuff that are going on. So whenever those things are happening.
So what are we doing this summer? We're doing a float trip.
We're doing a float trip in August, which I'm planning.
Bonfire in June.
Yeah,
Bonfire
Bonfire in
in
June, we have a
Bonfire
date.
slash camp
We have a
out.
date.
We have a date. It's the last Saturday in June. I think that's the 27th, but I don't know that I can push my buttons on my phone to find out right now.
Hang on, I can push your buttons.
Let's not.
This is church. you said the last Sunday in June.
Last Saturday.
Last Saturday
That
would be
is
the
the 27th.
27th.
It is the 27th, yes.
So it's funny because I have the calendar for church on here too, for our leadership thing, and it says Father's Day, and then it also says Jeff's Day. So for a hot second, I thought that was a holiday.
Nice.
Of Jeff's Day.
Day.
Well, it is in Houston.
What?
It is in Houston.
Yeah. July 7th, there's a proclamation signed by the mayor declaring
Jeff's Day.
July 7th, Jeffrey Overturf Day, and urging all Houstonians to celebrate.
Interesting. Can there be a shy day? If you get a proclamation
Did you get a proclamation from the mayor? I don't know.
I'll get it.
But
I'm gonna start a petition.
I know other people were born in Houston and no one got them. So I don't know if it's just because I was born in the downtown hospital.
That's gotta be it.
They just figured I lived that long.
We'll have a shy day, and everyone will just stay home and be weird.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Okay.
That's everything.
So,
There we go.
it's Thursday.
Yes.
And then we have chit chat
So we
here on Wednesday.
Chick chat here on
Chit chat.
Wednesday.
Here, yeah, at Jimmy's house, yeah. Because Classic Rock still, I think, closes at like 6 or something ridiculous.
Yeah, they're still closing.
Yeah, so,
What time is that at?
6:30.
Dope.
Usually 6:30, 7.
There's something in what month is that?
July.
There's something in July. Stay tuned.
Yeah. I can't remember what it was, but I'm supposed to be working on planning it. So
A hiking trip.
There's a hiking? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
There's something in July.
There's a hiking trip coming in July. More dates to follow.
Yeah.
And with the bonfire, there will be some more information, but if you would like to tent camp at our house that night, that's going to be
Not in the
available.
house, you'd be out in the field.
Yeah, because
Tent camp. We're not there's not enough room in the house to
You
tent.
said at our house, so I'm just.
At your property.
Okay.
so we can do a camp out.
Right, so more information on that to come, but get with us, because I'm going to create the event specifically for the bonfire, with a side note, because the instructions are gonna be a little different, so we're gonna, I'm not gonna confuse that, if that makes sense. But no, start planning, start thinking if you want to camp out that night of the bonfire out at our place.
Fun. Anything else? Okay.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Click the button
Hit the
below.
bell notification for more.
And church here next Sunday.
Church here next Sunday. Oh, there's a website that I don't know the link to. Adam, do that.
I'll do the thing.
Check in and say you were here,
Yeah.
even if you're just online.
I didn't do that thing. Don't be me. It's not Shy Day. Don't do what Shy does. I didn't check it.
It's rfamilychurch.churchtrack with a C, not a CK, .com. But you have to put in the HTTPS.
Okay.
At the
Dot,
beginning.
//
Yeah.
Dot.
Things.
Colon.
What's all the
No,
buttons?
just one colon.
Just one colon.
Don't
Oh,
put
dot.
Not dot.
Keep on backslash.
We're gonna make this as complicated as possible.
I always say dot. I didn't know they were called what they were called.
What they were called. Yes. Okay. Anything else?
Dot.
Would you like a chair back there, or
No,
do
I'm good.
you want the floor? Okay. She likes the floor. Okay. You enjoy that floor.
This is family church, we do whatever we want.
This is right.
That's just it.
Teachers
don't sit in the front.
They don't do that thing.
No.
Got it. Okay. Okay.
Technically, we're the front row,
But I'm watching online.
and you're not.
Oh snap.
This is the front row.
I'm gonna dump it.
So now she moves. We've now brought it to this attention. I'm so sorry. You be comfortable. I'm just gonna sit here. Okay.
I think we're good.
Okay, cool.
I'm done interrupting you now, Shy.
Oh, okay. So I'm going to be talking about addiction and idolatry. I'm going to start with addiction because that's like the more visible issue that we see, and it's a really hot topic in the field of public health, which I'm obviously involved in. And I'll wrap up with idolatry because it's kind of the foundation upon which addiction is settled. So, if you guys have trouble hearing me, let me know. If I'm too loud, let me know. I'm here. The definition that I found that's the most relevant to addiction, because there's all of these things where it's just like idolatry, is addiction is a disease. Okay, cool, but what does that mean? It's as a standalone, a psychological and a physical inability to stop consuming a chemical, drug, activity, or substance, even though it is causing psychological or physical harm. That's really broad. So I found that really interesting because it includes just about anything. So basically it's possible for literally anyone to be addicted to literally anything. Drugs, alcohol, money, sex, pornography, work, eating.
Phones.
Huh?
Phones.
Phones is a big one too.
Someone said shopping.
Shopping's a thing as well. Just about anything. In my research, I came across something really upsetting that I'm going to share with you so that you guys can be upset with me. Like there's addiction to like eating drywall and snorting baby powder and drinking nail polish. Eating toilet paper is a thing. That
I'm just gonna stick with my Tide Pods.
yeah, my strange addiction. Apparently Tide Pods. Yeah, and the smelling the head of a baby doll, and I'm upset about it. So be upset with me.
Shy, let's make you more upset. There's a whole TV show about it. It's called My Strange Addictions.
Yeah, that popped up and I immediately left that website. I was not thrilled about its existence. So of course there are circumstances that make the possibility more likely. Among this being genetics, we hear that a lot. There's no addiction gene, but there are genes that are associated with higher rates of addiction to various substances. More research shows that it's actually an environmental thing that causes a greater chance of one becoming addicted to something. Is anyone familiar with Rat Park? Huh? No? No? Okay, I'm gonna learn today. So, the short version is that when scientists gave a rat a choice between a water bottle that just has regular water and a water bottle that has water laced with heroin, it almost always chose the heroin. And it always overdosed.
So that was something that they were just like, yeah, if it's exposed to this addictive substance, then it will become addicted. But that kind of was thought maybe not to be the most efficient way to test this, because they're putting a rat alone in a cage with nothing to do except drink heroin. So, when they,
Kind of like
It
quarantine.
didn't have
Yes.
plain water? It didn't have plain water? It just
it had the plain water, but that's not nearly as much fun.
Okay, so it's
So
Right.
it's gonna sit alone in its cage and
Right.
drink heroin. So they decided that they're gonna test this by putting rats together in a cage with toys and access to exercise and the means to socialize with each other. And in that instance, the rats nearly never chose the heroin water. They never overdosed. So that was interesting too, because they saw that it may be a form of a bond. If you're missing that social aspect or a healthy living style, then you're going to form a bond with something else. So they're like, well, okay, that's easy to say when it's rats in a cage and they're much more simplistic. But when a human is exposed to these addictive substances like heroin, they're going to become addicted. Well, luckily for us, there was a nice little human experiment going on at the exact same time. Nam, the Vietnam War there. There were 20% of Vietnam soldiers of American soldiers in the Vietnam War that were taking heroin. Rather a lot. So when they ended the war and they came back, they were really worried that they were going to be addicted, that we were going to have all of these American soldiers, all these veterans out on the streets that were going to be heroin addicts. But what they saw when they came back is that 95% of those soldiers that were heroin users stopped usage completely without need of any form of intervention. So what they saw was that whenever they came back to their families and they had that social aspect, that bond, and that healthy lifestyle, and they were supported in that, they didn't need the heroin. They didn't need any of that substance to fulfill that part of their life. So it really did show that addiction kind of is this bond that you're creating with this substance that is filling a void in your life. So human beings have this natural need to bond, and when we're living a healthy and full life, we bond to each other and to God. So if someone is traumatized or isolated or just unable to bond strongly to God for whatever reason, we tend to see that relationship form to something else. So we see that addiction to something else, and that something is an idol, which we see actually pretty frequently within the Bible. But to paraphrase Tim Keller, an idol or idolatry is anything that you look at, and in your heart of hearts you say to it, if I have that, then my life has value. It's anything that you look at and you put ahead of God, essentially. So any life that is not built on God's glory and His grace is going to be built on the deification of something else. Some way in which you save yourself without having to go to God, or you attempt to do so. That's kind of our way of trying to keep control of our life when we can't actually do that. But this is why I don't really understand when people say that they don't believe in God, because everyone has a God, lowercase g, whether or not it's our Lord and Savior. So everyone has something that they prioritize over all other things, and that is called worship. And I do believe that we've discussed here before what worship is and how it's not just about singing pretty songs on Sunday, which Beth did a great job of doing today. But biblical examples of idolatry, I think the earliest that I saw included the golden calf, which was mentioned first in Exodus 32:4. That was Exodus 32:4. Does anybody want to read that, or does anybody want to share what they know about the golden calf?
Bible drill.
She's not.
Very patient.
Exodus 32:4.
Yep, I got it.
Got it? Bring it. Let's go.
Okay. He took what they handed him and made it into an idol cast in the shape of a calf, fashioning it with a tool.
Then they said, "These are your gods, Israel, who brought you out of Egypt." Yeah, so that was the first mention of an idol that I saw that truly gave shape to a physical form. Does anybody want to share anything more about that? Does anybody know more about that story? The golden calf?
Oh, sorry, I was still reading it.
Oh, you're good.
They gave up all their jewelry and belongings to melt into the calf, so they had to give up something.
Right, they gave up something, they prioritized that over what they currently had. And they fashioned it into something that they found to be more valuable.
Well, and that was, they got bored. That's why they got the calf in the first place, because they were all bored and not willing to be patient with Moses.
Like, oh, he's never coming back, so we'll.
Yeah.
They literally had no direction, and so they decided to make their own.
Correct.
Then I love when they got caught. They're like, oh, all this gold just fell in the fire and the calf jumped out. That's my favorite part of the story. I didn't do it.
It just happened.
Yeah. You see, I tripped and
So I kind of look at that and think that it's a little bit ridiculous. Like we can look on that and we can laugh at it. But when we look around, at least I see that if not all of us, at least the good majority of us, are doing the same thing. It just looks a little bit different because it's modern times.
Yeah, and I think, well, I was going to comment on that. I think like a lot of us, like, I don't know if anyone has thought this, I know I at least have, but like we think like really a gold calf, like you made that, like why are we, but the thing is, the calf was just a symbol for the greater trust, you know, the bigger thing that we have. Like we have the same kind of addictions today, you know, Netflix, stuff like, yeah, YouTube, you know, we have those kind of addictions and we just don't make a idol to represent that because we have our phones, which is already the thing that.
Exactly. So I kind of just want to take a moment for everybody to be honest with themselves, because I came across these questions and it kind of slapped me across the face. But we don't have to share out loud. That could get awkward. But kind of think about what we chase so we don't feel lonely. What defines us, and what do we give worth? And what would bring the most pain if we lost it? For me, if I'm honest with myself and everyone else here, that isn't always God for me. It's something that I'm incredibly guilty of. For me, there are times that I worship my Bible more than God himself, if everyone could see. I pay a lot of attention to this Bible. I don't always pay the same amount of attention to God. So there's times that I worship what he said more than him himself. Yes.
What were the questions?
The questions, I'm so sorry, were
What do we chase?
I gotta scroll back just
What
switch it.
defines us?
Yes. So it's what do we chase so that we don't feel lonely? What defines us and our worth? And what would bring us the most pain if we lost it?
Those are good questions.
I did not come up with them. I just came across them and they hurt me.
What's the last? We say the last one one more time.
The last one was what would bring us the most pain if we lost it? There are often times that I find myself putting science, possession, sports, and even my relationship ahead of my walk with God. So those are some of the things that I'm guilty of. But the really cool thing is that, like, okay, so to jump back to the Israelites, Jeremiah 3 calls the Israelites spiritual prostitutes, which sounds like really aggressive when you look at it, but it's really accurate, and I think that it's still an accurate description of the condition of the Christian church today. And that does not mean that our family church is, prostituting themselves or anything. I just mean the whole Christian church as a whole unit it is guilty of spiritual prostitution. And that doesn't mean that we need to hate alcohol or money or any earthly thing, because God did create those things, and they are meant to be enjoyed, but there is a proper context for those things. So, like, I guess when they're in their proper context, they become even greater. That's the only way that I really know how to phrase that. When you can use something the way that it's meant to be used, you're going to reach it at its full capacity. You're going to really see how great that thing is that God gave us if we use it in its proper format. So I like the imagery that Jefferson Bethke creates, that God created oceans, and the metaphor is we're like full-grown adults in a kiddie pool going, oh my goodness, guys, this is like so cool all the time. That's what we're doing with these earthly possessions that we tend to worship over him, even though he's given us so many other things that we can really latch onto and create that bond with God. And we're creating these bonds with something that is meaningless, it's earthly, it's temporary. But to put these things ahead of God is like saying, oh, thanks, I thank you. Okay, bye. and just kind of walking away with this thing that you don't actually know how to use. And you're just saying, okay, yeah, we'll take your stuff, but you have no place in my life. And that's not a great trade-off, if I'm honest. That doesn't seem like the best option. When we dedicate ourselves to trying to be our own God, when we try to control these things in our lives, when we try to be that God, when he's over here exchanging himself for us, and he did it in the past and he does it every day, he's exchanged himself for us by taking away our sin. And he created us in this world around us knowing that we would do this, knowing that we would oftentimes put these things over him. And I was going to save this quote for the end to kind of go out on a bang and do like a little bit of a mic drop, but I'm going to share it now and tie it into something else. But the quote, Jefferson Bethke said, what if those other things you worship took nails in their wrists? Or how about when's the last time money or sex forgave you? Would your boyfriend set you free from all you're enslaved to? What else died so that you could be made new? And when's the last time the world promised satisfaction and actually came through? And it's a powerful sentiment, if I'm honest. It kind of, again, slaps you across the face and you're like, whoa, okay, hang on, yeah, I need to take a step back. But what's really cool about that is that God does give us a way out. In 1 Corinthians 10:13, 1 Corinthians 10:13, we're told that no temptation has ever overtaken you except what is common to humanity. God is faithful, and he will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you are able. But with the temptation, he will also provide a way of escape so that you are able to bear it. That escape is a bond with God. Isn't that cool? I think that's amazing that he allows us to do that, even though we're like, nah, you're all the way over there. But he does allow us to create this bond with him, and he's reaching out to us, and all we have to do is reach back. But if you're struggling with that, the other gift that he gives us is fellowship. So reaching out to members of the church is always an option. Reach out to me. I'm more than happy to sit and listen, or to spit out words of wisdom that are never mine. I just awkwardly let God talk. So the words are never going to be mine, but I'll spit them out for you. But I don't know, just kind of letting God guide that conversation. That's another way of having that bond, is through fellowship. And I'm sure that I'm not the only member of this church that is willing for you to come to them and talk. And there's members of other churches, and I think that as long as we can unite, that's something that we're always going to have. And creating that bond with each other, and that bond with God and through God allows us to kind of put these idols aside. So it doesn't necessarily help us just to know what addiction and idols are, but we have to know how to combat that. And I do think that fellowship is that vessel to a stronger relationship with God. So that's kind of my ending point of let's kind of go through the future and allow that fellowship and that love to kind of be put towards creating a stronger bond with God, free of idols and addictions. Any comments, questions, thoughts, concerns? Bring them.
I love the idea that what we worship, like anything other than God, we're literally dying for it.
Mhm.
as opposed for it dying for us.
Right.
And that whole quote, you know, that's kind of what I got out of that. And I just, that's a cool way to look at, you know, either, I don't know, I just thought that's cool.
Yeah, those other things are never going to put themselves down for us. They never will. Those idols are never going to bring us what we think, and that's the point. We're constantly going to be reaching out for something else to do what God has already done for us and what He continues to do for us every day. So just being able to recognize that and kind of turn away from those things.
I think it's also easy to quantify your addictions and make it, oh, well, I only do it this much, or it's okay because I still, fit God in sometimes during the week. And it's important to also remind yourself, like, I should shed it. Like, it shouldn't be so important, where the idea of me not listening to, an audiobook or watching Netflix for a week or playing video games for a week should be terrifying. That's a bad thing if I'm thinking that.
Right. Yeah, I kind of get guilty. I'll come back from a long day at work or something, and I'm like, okay, so I'll get my episode of Netflix in, and then I'll go to bed. But if I don't have time for that episode of Netflix before I want to go to bed, I'm genuinely upset.
Quit at any time.
Right.
But then we start experiencing those withdrawal-like symptoms, if you will. And that's whenever I think that's the indicator for me, where I'm like, oh, okay, so this is I told myself, like, oh yeah, this isn't an addiction. I'm just doing this for fun. Like playing video games or whatever. I'm just doing this to relax. And then 4 hours later, it's like, holy.
Sure. The thing that I most commonly, the physical, like, I guess somatic response that I notice the most is like me being addicted to caffeine. So, who else is guilty?
You're going too far now. Now you're stepping on toes.
I'm sorry.
They've had some fun experiments with caffeine in animals, and the addiction behind it. Something you should look at.
For sure. And that's something that I'll notice, and as soon as I notice it, I'll step back and I won't drink caffeine for a couple of weeks and make sure that my body can kind of go through that withdrawal process, because that's what it is. When I get the headaches just because I didn't have coffee or Red Bull, then that's something that is an issue. So I'll take a step back, I'll kind of separate myself from that thing. And I can still have a Red Bull every once in a while without it being something that I need first thing in the morning to be able to go throughout my day.
There are levels though. I'm like, caffeine to me is a healthy addiction. I don't do heroin.
See, I also have an addiction to buying books, and I'm like, see, it's fine though, because I could be doing crack. But I'm reading 17 books at one time. It's an issue.
That's more than my life.
But going off of that, I think that's our thing. Is like we have to just sit down and analyze ourselves. Like, that's not a bad habit. But reading books, it's a great thing. But I think the big question is it replacing the time with God?
Right.
Or are we not inviting God into that moment? I think that's when you're talking about passion.
That's a good point.
It's like, I don't think, like, for example, going out, we went out and hiked for a while. Like, going out and hiking that's not a problem in itself. You invite God into that. You invite God into, and you can use your passion, whatever it is, as a jumping point for ministry.
Right, absolutely.
Well, and we all have addictions and tendencies toward idolatry. I mean, sometimes our own passions get out of kilter, and even someone who's really, really, really worked at that has to continue to work at that.
Right, that's never something that you've mastered.
Right, and I think what a discussion kind of reminds me is that we all struggle with something and it helps to kind of look at that person who's struggling with something that is more trendy. We talk about the heroin addiction and the high meth use that's happening.
The opioid epidemic that's going on.
Yeah, and so we sometimes look at those people and go, well, I'm not doing that. But they, like, you go back to that bond. They're missing the reason. They're replacing that bond with that. And I have one client specifically who says, I do meth specifically because I'm so depressed, and it turns off my depression. It turns off my emotions. It numbs numbs me is the word he uses.
Mhm.
And that's exactly what he's looking for. He needs that bond. And so that's what the whole passion thing is about, is to reach out to those people who are hurting
Mhm.
and share, and that bond that God can give. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And,
And-
oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say that if you're struggling with this image of like a bond and something to fulfill that, do you guys ever eat when you're bored? Yeah, I do. You're missing you're having a void of something, so you're bored, so you literally try to fill a void. Yes.
I think like some of it is like you don't want to be bored, like with anything. Like
Exactly.
you're not bored, so you're gonna watch Netflix. You're gonna.
There's actually like a psychological study about that where they put people in an empty room. Like it's not completely empty. There was like a desk and some stuff on the desk, but in the center of the room, like on a coffee table in the center of the room, is a button that you touch it and you receive an electric shock. Like you receive a small electric shock, and they have people come in and they sit them down and they say, hey, I want you to touch a button. You're going to receive a shock, just so the person knows what it feels like. And so they have the person shock themselves and like, all right, now the psychological experiment's about to start. You just wait here for a few minutes, and then we'll go. And so then they leave, and then they just time the person. Is how long are they going to sit there without touching the button? Some people only go like 4 minutes, but like everyone inevitably goes and touches the button again because they're bored.
It's an addiction to being busy, and
They will go and hurt themselves.
I was
Right.
I'm just gonna sit there the whole time.
my not English Bible person, Smallwood in college. He was like, a lot of us have an addiction to being fast and always having something to do.
I do.
And he admitted he was the dude who goes like 60 on the highway because he has nowhere to be. And we all feel like we have somewhere to be, even if we're just going home to watch Netflix. Like we have somewhere to be, and we don't. And so he was like, if you just take that time to like slow down on the highway, maybe go the speed limit, you don't have to go under it, but like maybe
Please
just
don't be that guy.
maybe just drive down the right side of the lane and don't pass people because you have nowhere to be. And it's just like slowing yourself down and thinking, wow, I don't have anywhere to be. That's great.
Yeah, that physically makes me uncomfortable. Like thinking about doing that and slowing down physically makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah, but there's no reason to speed all
Right.
the time.
And yeah.
That's part of the reason why women have such a hard time with empty nest when their kids leave home.
Yep.
Because they're always busy, taking care of the kids, clean the house, going to their next activity, doing, and then all of a sudden, oh my God, what do I do with all this free time now? And yeah, it does. And so it's like, because we're great multitaskers, right? Women are just constantly multitasking, and then when you take all those tasks away, oh my gosh, I've got to fill it back up with something else. I have to be busy.
Fill it with Jesus.
Not usually the option that we get
It's
for,
not.
though.
It's harder.
You're right, it is harder.
And it's not, I mean, at least for me, it's not a tactile relationship. So it's much easier to fill it with something that I can physically feel or physically like bear witness to it being filled, this void in myself being filled. Whereas a lot of the time, sitting with God and allowing Him to fill that void is something that I have to look inward and genuinely like understand that is being filled. So that's a lot harder.
And when you said, and you didn't say this, but my imagery came up with it while you were saying, oh, thanks, I'll take that, and okay. I saw a proposal. I saw, here's a ring, and we take the ring, and do we continue to build the relationship that goes with the rest of that, or do we take what He's given us in His sacrifice and say, thank you, that's awesome, but I don't know that we should move in together. You know, I don't know that we should actually get married and actually, like, have a relationship. You know, I mean,
We're just gonna be engaged for 3
do
years.
we take the ring? Do we take a sacrifice and make that that's it? I don't know. That's not what you said.
No, but that's way
what I
better than the
heard.
image that I came up with. My brain, I was really tired. My brain came up with like combining vines, and I was like, it's an avocado. Thanks.
I thought you were talking about the right vines. I was like, is she talking about like vines or
No.
like my vines?
No, and he said avocado, thanks, and like walking away with this avocado, and you're like, this avocado is dope, and forgetting who gave it to you. So.
Why
carrying them out of
You need to watch the vine first.
It doesn't make any sense.
be alright.
But I was really tired. I
makes
actually I had it inserted and it was in my notes and everything. I'm like, no, delete that. That's nonsense.
No. Please put more vines.
Oh, you should put them on the screen next time with the PowerPoint.
At my work, I have vine of the month.
Did anybody else have any thoughts that they wanted to share? I did really like that image because that really makes sense as far as like, oh, I'm gonna take this ring and I'm gonna turn my back on you and I'm just gonna sit here and I'm gonna love this ring.
Right.
Then it turns into Lord of the Rings and
If
that's
it's
how
no,
it started.
yeah, there's no relationship. If you don't, yeah, yeah.
Then you gotta go to the
Yeah.
fires of Mount Doom and
There are a lot of people who are like that. I've been baptized, I've been saved, I did the thing, I have the ring, I'm good. I don't need to go any further than that. And they miss the relationship.
right. Oh, very true.
This relationship is gonna break if I sell you and you.
What? Looks likely. Okay. Anything else? No? Okay.
Thanks, buddy.
Okay, thanks, bye!